The city of Accra was awake early that Sunday morning, but the loudest noise was coming from Divine Grace Assembly, one of the biggest churches in the city. The compound was full of cars, buses, and ababoya, as ushers struggled to direct traffic and welcome the hundreds of worshippers trooping in from different parts of the city. Inside the massive church auditorium, the choir was singing with so much power and people were shouting hallelujah so loudly that it felt as if the whole street was vibrating. Standing on the altar holding a golden microphone in his hand was Pastor or James, or the man everybody called One Touch. He was tall, dark, and very handsome, dressed in a spotless white agbada with shiny black shoes. His deep voice carried authority as he preached, and each time he raised his hands, people screamed and fell under the power of his prayers. In Accra, almost everyone had heard of him. He was known across the cities as the pastor whose miracle crusades drilled thousands of people. His sermons were streamed on YouTube and Facebook, and big politicians and rich businessmen were regular members of his church. However, 10 years ago, this same pastor was just an ordinary evangelist who went from street to street preaching with a small borrowed microphone. But today, he was one of the most respected pastors in the entire country. People brought their sick relatives from far places and they testified of healing. Many couples came bearing and left with pregnancies. Even university students came to his church to pray for success and jobs. And when their prayers were answered, they returned with thanksgiving. Everyone loved him, everyone trusted him, and everyone believed he was a true man of God. But standing on that altar with thousands of eyes fixed on him, Pastor James carried a secret he could not share with anyone, because no matter how hard he tried to focus on the message, his eyes kept wandering towards the left side of the choir stand where Jessica Kuade, one of the youngest choristers, was standing with a microphone in her hand. She was singing a melodious worship song, and her voice was so sweet and powerful that people had started calling her the Angel of Divine Grace. Jessica was only 25 years old. She was beautiful with smooth dark skin and bright eyes that seemed to shine when she smiled. She had joined the church choir just 8 months earlier when she moved from Nogokpo to live with her aunt in Accra. From the very first day she came, people noticed her beauty. But it was her voice that made her stand out. Whenever she sang, even the restless ones became quiet, and it almost felt like heaven itself stopped to listen. Pastor James had been the one who encouraged her to join the choir, praising her talents and telling everyone she was a gift from God to the ministry. But behind that innocent angelic voice, Jessica had a different kind of story. She was not just an ordinary young girl looking for God. She was the only daughter of Erfo Aziza, a well-known native doctor in Nogokpo town, who was feared by many for his powers. Growing up, Jessica had seen things no child should ever see. She had followed her father into dark shrines, watched him perform rituals at midnight, and heard him speak to spirits in strange languages. She never liked that life. So when her mother's sister invited her to Accra, she saw it as her chance to escape the darkness of her father's world. But some things do not leave you easily. And unknown to many, Jessica's bloodline was tied to secrets, altars, and fetish powers. For 14 years, Pastor James had been married to Abigail, a decent and beautiful woman. They got married when he had nothing back, when he was still struggling and preaching from street to street with dusty shoes and no car to his name. She had believed in his calling more than anyone else and had supported him with everything she had, her prayers, her little savings from her small shop, and her time, and together they built the ministry from one tiny rented shop into one of the biggest churches in Accra. Unfortunately, these days Abigail had begun to notice changes. Her husband, who used to laugh and gist with her every night, now stayed out late almost every day, claiming he was at prayer meetings or counseling sessions. He usually carried 2 phones, and whenever one of them rang, he would walk out of the room before answering it. She also noticed a strange perfume on his clothes, and sometimes she woke up in the middle of the night and saw him sitting in the sitting room scrolling on his phone with a faraway look in his eyes. One night she sat on the bed and asked, "James, are you okay? You've been different these days." He smiled, kissed her forehead, and replied, "Oh, I am fine. God is taking me into a deeper season of sacrifice. I need to spend more time alone with Him." She nodded silently and didn't ask further questions, but her heart felt heavy. She had been married to him long enough to know when something was wrong. But instead of fighting or arguing, she went on her knees and prayed, "God, please fight for me. Keep my marriage. Keep my husband's hearts. Don't let the devil enter our home." Meanwhile, Jessica was slowly drawing closer to Pastor James, always in a hurry to help him prepare sermons or stay behind for late-night prayers. At first, he thought it was harmless, just ministry work. But lately, something inside him had started to shift. Whenever their eyes met, he felt an unusual pull that he tried to pray away. But the more he prayed, the more he noticed her. And Jessica was smart and patient. She understood his weakness without even saying a word. The congregation still loved their pastor. The city still praised his name, and the Divine Grace Assembly still saw him as a mighty man of God. But inside his heart, a dangerous battle had already started. It was a Wednesday evening, and Divine Grace Assembly had just finished its powerful midweek service. The worship was electric. The prayers were fiery, and the church hall still carried the echoes of tongues and hallelujah as members slowly made their way out into the cool night air. A few ushers stood outside chatting while others locked up the children's section inside the main auditorium. The lights were dimmer now, but one figure remained seated on the third row, pretending to tidy up her choir notes while secretly waiting. It was Jessica. She had been watching Pastor James carefully for weeks, studying his moods, his patterns, and his weaknesses. She had noticed how his eyes lingered on her sometimes during rehearsals, how he avoided holding her gaze for too long, and how his voice softened when he spoke to her. She wasn't rushing. She knew patience was power. So that night she waited until almost everyone had left except for two choir members packing instruments at the far end of the hall. Pastor James was still in his office, seated behind his large polished mahogany desk, scrolling through his sermon notes on his tablets, trying to prepare for Sunday's message. He was tired, but more than that, his mind was restless. Lately, he had found himself thinking about Jessica more than he wanted to admit. He had fasted, prayed, and even called his mentor for counsel. But somehow the attraction wouldn't leave him. He had convinced himself that maybe it was just admiration, but deep down he knew something dangerous was staring inside him. Then he heard a soft knock on the office door. "Come in," he said without looking up. The door opened slowly, and Jessica stepped in holding a small notebook in her hand. She smiled shyly and said, "Daddy, I wanted to ask if I can help you arrange your sermon notes for Sunday. I noticed you were still working, and I thought maybe I can assist." He looked up sharply, surprised to see her. "Why are you still here? I thought everyone had gone home." "They have, sir," she said, walking a little closer. "I was just helping Sister Hannah pack the choir files, and I thought I should check on you before leaving." For a moment he hesitated. He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her to go home immediately. But something about the way she stood there weakened his resolve. He cleared his throat and gestured towards the desk. "All right, just arrange those outlines there." Jessica smiled and moved towards the desk, deliberately close enough for him to catch the gentle scent of her perfume. Soft, sweet, and distracting. She bent slightly as she organized the papers, and even though he tried to focus on his tablet, he could feel his heart beating faster than it should. They worked in silence for a while until she asked, "Daddy, can I ask you something personal?" He shifted uncomfortably. "What is it?" She paused and looked down as if she was shy. Then she whispered, "Do you ever get lonely? You carry so many burdens for this church, for people, for everyone. But who carries you?" The question hit him unexpectedly. It was the same thought he had battled silently for months. The same emptiness Abigail's distance had left inside him without her knowing. He swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. But his silence was enough for Jessica to continue. "I see the weight you carry, sir," she said. "Sometimes when you pray for others, I pray for you too. I pray that God keeps your strength. I admire you so much, Daddy." Her words settled on him like a soft blanket. He shouldn't have let it reach his heart, but it did. He sighed and leaned back in his chair, staring at her quietly for a few seconds. And in that silence, something passed between them. Something unspoken but undeniable. He finally said, "Ah, that nice, but you need to be careful with words like that. You are a daughter in this ministry." She quickly nodded and lowered her eyes. "I know, sir. I'm sorry if I overstepped." But the softness in her voice carried a different message entirely. And when she looked up, her eyes revealed something piercing and seducing. And in that moment, Pastor James felt it. The door he had been struggling to keep shut for months had finally crept open. And even though he tried to tell himself he was still in control, deep down he knew that a line had been crossed. It was a small one, yes, but that kind of small crack widens quickly when no one is watching. When she left the office that night, she smiled to herself as she walked towards the gates. She wasn't in a hurry. She didn't need to be. She had planted the seed, and she knew seeds had a way of growing silently slowly until one day they broke through the surface for everyone to see. Inside the office, James sat motionless for several minutes, staring at the Bible on his desk. He said a short prayer under his breath, asking God for strength. But his heart was heavy because even without touching her, he already felt guilty. 2 months after that quiet night in the office, nothing in the Divine Grace Assembly looked different on the outside, but inside everything had already changed. Pastor James still preached with fire. He still prayed for the sick. And he still wore his broad, confident smile on the altar every Sunday. But in his heart there was a growing restlessness he could not pray away. What started as innocent late-night help had slowly grown into something he could no longer control. And even though he tried to resist it, his secret moment with Jessica Kuade had become too deep to untangle easily. Jessica had become bolder. She no longer waited for him to invite her. She now created reasons to be around him, using the excuse of helping him prepare sermon notes, bringing him tea during late-night videos, and whispering encouragement whenever she noticed he was stressed. To the congregation, she was still the sweet, soft-spoken girl with the angelic voice. But deep inside her heart, she was scheming, calculating, and waiting for the perfect moment to step into his life fully. That moment came on a hot Tuesday afternoon. Pastor James was in his office going through the church's financial reports when the door opened and Jessica walked in. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a small white paper bag. Her usually calm face looked pale and her voice shook as she said, "Daddy, we need to talk." He frowned immediately, sensing trouble. "What is it? Why do you look like this?" Jessica hesitated for a moment, staring at the floor. Then slowly she brought out a pregnancy test strip from the bag and placed it on his desk. "I am pregnant." The words landed like a hammer on his chest. For a few seconds he didn't move, didn't blink, and didn't breathe. Then he picked up the strip with shaky hands, staring at it as though the 2 bold red lines might disappear if he looked long enough. "You can't be serious," he whispered. "Jessica, this can't be happening." "It is happening," she replied. "I went to the hospital this morning. They confirmed it. Pastor, I am carrying your child." He dropped the strip as though it burned his fingers and stood up, pacing the office. "No, no, no, no. This can't happen. Do you know what you are saying? Do you know what this would do to me? To the church, to my marriage?" Jessica's eyes were filled with tears, but she stood her ground. "What about me? Do you think I planned this? Do you think I wanted this to happen? You were there, Pastor. You didn't stop it. And now you want me to carry this alone." James stopped pacing. He rubbed his forehead and let out a deep sigh. "Listen to me carefully," he said, lowering his voice as if afraid that the walls might hear them. "You need to handle this quietly. I will give you money enough to take care of everything. Nobody must know. Not the church board, nobody." Jessica's tears stopped instantly. She stared at him with anger. "Take care of it? You mean I should remove it?" He avoided her eyes. "It is the only way to protect everything we've built." But Jessica shook her head slowly as her expression turned cold and distant. "No, Pastor James, I am not removing this baby. If you don't want me, fine. But you cannot erase me. This child will not be a secret for a long moment. Silence filled the office, and that was the moment everything between them changed. She walked out without another word, leaving him standing there, frozen with fear pounding in his chest. For weeks later, the first rumors began. It started small with just one or two gossiping voices after choir rehearsal. But like dry leaves catching fire, the news spread quickly across Divine Grace Assembly. Mama Easter, the leader of the Women's Fellowship, was the first to notice Jessica's new glow on her freshly braided hair and the expensive handbags she suddenly started carrying. She leaned closer to another chorister during practice and whispered, "Where is this small girl getting money from? Who is sponsoring her shiny face like this?" By the next Sunday, half the choir started gossiping. By the following Wednesday, the gossip had reached the ushers. By Friday, someone had accidentally mentioned it to a prayer group leader. And by the end of that week, Abigail Kumi overheard two women whispering in the car park. "Have you heard what they are saying about Pastor and that Jessica girl?" Abigail's chest tightened immediately. That night, she waited for her husband to return home. When he finally walked in at 10 p.m. looking exhausted, she asked, "James, is there something I need to know about you and Jessica?" He froze for a second, but it was long enough for her to notice. He quickly recovered, laughing awkwardly as he walked towards her. "Ooh, please don't tell me you started listening to gossip. People will always talk, especially when they see God blessing us. I have nothing to do with Jessica. Then why are people saying she looks pregnant?" Her voice cracked as she asked. He stepped closer and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "They are lying, Abigail. I swear before the God I served, nothing like that happened. Trust me." Abigail looked into his eyes for a long time, searching for the man she married. But all she saw was a stranger she could no longer reach. That night she prayed longer than she had in years, asking God for clarity and asking him for truth. 2 days later, the Board of Elders summoned Pastor James for a private meeting. The rumors had reached their ears and they wanted answers. He walked into the meeting hall dressed neatly in a dark blue senator attire, carrying his Bible as if its weight could cover his shame. Elder Moses, the oldest and most respected among them, leaned forward and said, "One touch, we have been hearing troubling things, so we needed to hear from you directly. Is there anything between you and Sister Jessica?" James cleared his throat first, a confident smile, and replied, "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. These are lies from the pits of hell. All attacks against this ministry. I am clean before God and before man." Well, unknown to him, Jessica had already planned her move. That Sunday during the second service, just as the offertory session ended, she walked slowly towards the middle aisle, dressed in a simple flowing gown, trembling as she held a small piece of paper. The congregation fell silent as everyone turned to look at her. She stopped in front of the altar, raised her voice and said loudly enough for the microphones to catch it, "Pastor James, why are you lying to these people? You know I am carrying your child." The silence that followed was so thick that even the ceiling fan seemed to stop spinning. The entire church gasped as the camera lights flashed from different angles and people covered their mouths in shock. Some members stood trying to calm her, but she shook them off and kept shouting through tears, "You promised to stand by me, Pastor. Now you want to deny me before God and before this congregation. God will judge you. The blood in my womb will speak against you if you abandon me." Abigail sat frozen on the front row. Her whole body was shaking and her heart was pounding so loudly that she could barely breathe. The church hall erupted into chaos. Ushers rushed towards Jessica and phones were recording the entire saga. Pastor James stood there on the altar gripping the microphone tightly with his jaw clenched as he stared at her. And finally, with a voice as cold as stone, he said, "You are lying, Jessica. I do not know what spirit has possessed you, but you are not carrying my child." Jessica's tears turned into bitter laughter, the kind that carried more pain than sound. She shook her head slowly and spoke into the microphone before walking out. "Pastor James, you will regret this day. You don't know me. My father's gods will fight for me. The God you preach about cannot save you from what flows in my blood." And with that, she dropped the microphone and walked out of the church, leaving silence, shame, and fear behind her. That day, everything changed in Divine Grace Assembly. A cold chill ran through everyone present as if they were being dragged into a spiritual war. Far away in Nogokpo, deep inside a quiet forest where the air was thick with the smell of damp soil and burning incense, Erfo Aziza in a chair sat cross-legged before an old shrine with white chalk markings on his face. Around him were 7 clay pots filled with dark oil, feathers, and strange bones. Behind him, Jessica stood barefoot, dressed in a white cloth tied tightly around her chest. Her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. She had returned to her father after the humiliation at Divine Grace Assembly and collapsed in his compound with tears streaming down her face as she narrated everything to him. How Pastor James had denied her before the congregation. How Abigail sat quietly like a victorious queen. And how people whispered behind her back, calling her a liar and destroyer. Erfo Aziza in anger listened without interrupting. His sharp eyes were fixed on the ground as he slowly ground between his fingers. When she finished, he remained silent for a long time, and then with a calm voice he said, "My daughter, no man brings shame to the blood of Aziza and goes free. You carry my blood and my blood does not forget." That same night he prepared the ritual. 7 black goats were slaughtered. Their blood was collected in a large calabash. The chant began at midnight, soft at first then louder. It vibrated through the forest as unseen forces stared awake. Erfo Aziza's voice thundered as he called on ancient spirits bound to their family bloodline, speaking words older than any language Jessica understood. The fire burned high and wild, throwing shadows across the carved idols behind him. At the peak of the ritual, he raised his staff towards the dark sky and declared, "Whoever mocks the blood of Aziza, let his light turn to darkness. Let his altar dry up. Let his strength waste away," until he begged for mercy at the feet of the spirits he mocked. Jessica tears flowed freely as she knelt beside the shrine crying, "Dad, I just want him to feel what I felt." Erfo Aziza touched her head gently and said, "He will, my daughter, he will." That Sunday morning back in Accra, the assembly gathered for service as usual. The church was filled to the brim more than usual. Some came to worship, but many came to see what would happen next after last week's drama. Pastor James stepped onto the altar determined to preach powerfully and prove that he was still in control. First, everything went smoothly. The choir sang, ushers danced, and members shouted hallelujah. Then just as he began his sermon, standing tall in his long flowing white robe, something strange happened. His voice, which was usually deep and steady, suddenly cracked. He coughed once, then again. Then he froze mid-sentence. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Confusion spread through the congregation. He cleared his throat and tried again, but his voice completely failed him. Sweat began to gather on his forehead as he gripped the pulpit for balance. A Dickens rushed forward with a glass of water. But before he could drink, James staggered backward, clutching his chest as if invisible hands were pressing down on him. Someone shouted, "One touch! Somebody call the doctors!" 2 ushers helped him down from the altar while Abigail rushed forward with panic written all over her face. They carried him into his office as the service ended in confusion, and speculations rose like a storm across the hall. At the hospital later that day, doctors ran multiple tests on him, but everything came back normal. "There is nothing physically wrong with him," the senior doctor said, shaking his head. "Maybe it's a stress or maybe exhaustion, but medically he's fine." Also, who sat by his bedside that night holding his hand? She was deeply afraid. She knew her husband's struggles better than anyone else. And deep inside, she sensed that this wasn't an ordinary sickness. That night she prayed, begging God to protect him. But when she finally drifted into sleep, she had a terrifying dream. She saw herself standing in the middle of the Divine Grace Assembly, surrounded by snakes, moving across the floor, hissing loudly. In the corner, she saw Jessica laughing and holding a crying baby dripping with blood. Above the altar, a dark shadow loomed, calling her husband's name over and over again. She woke up gasping, dressed in sweat. Her heart was pounding so hard that she could hear it in her ears. What is this? What do you think will happen next? Will Pastor James survive the mysterious illness that has already shaken his faith and ministry? Will he ever get a chance to confess and be saved? Or will the altar of darkness claim him? Will Jessica escape the danger she unleashed, or can her father protect her? We'll find out in part 2. Kindly share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring the next part your way. Bye.